So this is the Nikon ZR, and if you picked up this camera, you're probably wondering how the heck do I edit and grade the red raw footage coming out of this camera? Mostly because editing raw video is a little bit of a different process. It also requires processing. It's a little bit different than editing regular video, but don't worry because I'm going to show you how I do that in this video here, specifically when it comes to Final Cut Pro, but the process is pretty much the same whether you're editing in Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. So let's hop in to Final Cut. Okay, the first thing you'll notice when you plug in your camera and you're looking at these files is that there's two files that get generated when shooting in Red RAW. You'll get an MP4 file, which is like a really low res 1080p preview video, and then there's the R3D file. The R3D file is obviously the Red RAW file that we want to work with. Now, dragging this directly into Final Cut Pro, it's just not going to work. And that's because Apple and Final Cut just don't recognize the R3D file format, so you'll need to go over to Red's website and download the Red Apple workflow. I'll leave a link down in the description for it. Once that's downloaded, you may need to restart your computer, for sure Final Cut, but you'll be able to grab that file, that R3D file, and now drop it into your Final Cut Pro timeline. Now, the second thing you'll need are Red's IPP2 output presets, or LUTs. These are going to be your conversion LUTs because we are shooting in Red's log. We're going to need Red's conversion LUTs. So I'll also throw a link in the description for those. Now that that's out of the way, we can begin editing. So we have our Red RAW clip here. Now we can start editing this like we usually do, throw a LUT on it and then start grading. The one benefit to shooting in raw video is that we can actually come up to this I menu up in the top right corner. And you can see right here that we shot at R3D NE, 4K, 23 frames per second. But you'll see at the bottom here, we now have this modify Red RAW settings. We can click on that. And these will be the default settings, I believe. It'll say red wide gamut RGB, gamma will be log 3G10, and then you'll have all your adjustments. Now you can process this footage and convert it directly in here, or in color space you can go to Rec 709, and then gamma you can switch it to BT 1886, and it'll do a really good conversion here. And then you can really play with the contrast. We really only get Kelvin, tint, and contrast. Now you can convert your footage just like this. You can adjust your ISO directly in this window, click apply, then come up here, add, let's say, a color wheel, and you can really start grading the footage. This is a great way to do it. That's not how I do it. I've been getting a lot of questions on how I grade Red RAW footage out of the Nikon ZR, so I'm going to show you exactly how I do that with this clip right here. So I'm going to go into my pack and I'm going to drag on Grade Pro by me. This is a plugin that I've been working on for Final Cut Pro for a very long time. I don't know about you, but I love Final Cut Pro, but I hate these standard tools that we have built in to Final Cut Pro as of right now in terms of color grading compared to other platforms out there. And so I wanted to create my own plugin for Final Cut where we have all the tools that we use on a daily basis directly in front of us. We don't have to go searching for it, going through all of Final Cut Pro's settings. So for this plugin, we have all the tools that we use on a daily basis. We have all of our basic exposure adjustments like exposure, temperature, contrast, saturation, brightness, black point. We also have the ability to add a color space transform LUT, a look LUT, add sharpening and clarity, and a pro mist filter effect, a film grain, letterbox, vignetting. We also have this thing called quick film curve, which is a curve that I basically add to every single one of my videos. And so I just wanted to make that available to you here. So it's as easy as just clicking this checkbox and it applies the film curve. This is by no means completed yet. This is basically the first version of it. There'll be plenty more updates coming as I add more and more features. I really want this to be an all-in-one color grading plugin for Final Cut Pro. This is really just the beginning. So if you want to support the channel, you can go and pick it up down below. And if you pick it up now, all future updates will come obviously at no additional costs. But anyway, let's get into editing the Red RAW footage out of this camera. The first thing I do is I obviously throw on my plugin, but then I go into the CST LUT or the color space transform and I apply the IPP2 Red LUTs. This is the folder that I put them in. And essentially how this works is we have contrast, and then on the right side, you'll see something called hard size, medium size, soft size, very soft size. And this is essentially our highlight roll off, or how intense we want those highlights. So if I go to something like high contrast, hard size, you'll see just how bright those highlights are, and the roll off isn't as soft or as smooth. Now, if I go to the same amount of contrast, so high contrast, but I go very soft size, you'll see that it still has a lot of contrast, but the highlights are obviously not as strong. It's not as intense, and we really have a nice pleasing image. I typically like either high contrast very soft or high contrast soft. Now I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna adjust my highlights because they do seem a little bit strong. I'm gonna adjust the shadows, just bring that up a little bit. Black point. Let me make this bigger so I can see exactly what I'm doing here. And it's really looking good as it is. The red raw footage is extremely sharp. Sometimes I do like adding a little bit more sharpness. I'm just gonna increase saturation here. I'm gonna come down here and I am going to add the Pro Mist filter effect. You can see it just gets a little bit softer and we can really go intense with that. You can see just around here how soft it gets. But we can dial this back and just give it just a slight bump. And then we'll come into here, we'll also add film grain. We'll just dial this down a little bit, something like that. We obviously have letterbox matte. We can add things like add a letterbox to it. We're not going to do that for this clip, but this is looking good as it is. We can obviously come in here and adjust the temperature if we want, or tint, but for red raw, I wouldn't suggest doing it through here. I'd actually go into the eye menu, modify red raw settings, and if I want to change the temperature, I can do that in the red raw settings, and I can adjust the tint in here as well. That way it's non-destructive. Essentially how I like to grade this red raw footage, I'll do all of my adjustments in my Grade Pro plugin or within Final Cut, and then I'll go into the red raw settings, and then I'll fine tune the image in here. Also drop or change the ISO within here to get a look that I like. So if 800, I'm looking at this, I'm like 800 seems just a little bit too bright or exposed. I can always just drop this to 640 to get a little bit more of a moodier scene. I can also drop it even lower. I can go higher if I want. I think this was properly exposed. I did a pretty good job exposing it, not to boost myself, but I'm gonna leave it at 800. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast in here. I'm just gonna give it a bump in brightness. Now, the one limitation that I had with the Grade Pro plugin as of right now is I can't seem to find a way of how to get the curves and color wheels working with this plugin. So you will still have to do that separately, but basically the way I've been doing it is edit in the Grade Pro plugin, edit those raw settings and those values, and then I'll come into here, and if I really want to get into color wheels, I can always just add color wheels in Final Cut Pro. They work really well with the Grade Pro plugin, and then I can just really dial in a look that I want for this footage. Just like that, very subtle, but it literally went from this to this. I think it looks great. The red raw footage coming out of ZR looks amazing as always. Now, one last thing that you want to make sure you're doing to the red raw footage is adding noise reduction. We are working with red files, which means there's no processing happening at all to them. So things like noise reduction need to be added in post. You can always use Final Cut's noise reduction that is built in. I find this one takes a little bit long to process. There are other third-party noise reduction plugins for Final Cut Pro. So let's just grab another clip here. Maybe we'll grab one from my Turkey trip. Sure, let's do this clip here. So we have this really nice clip from Turkey. Same thing, we'll grab my Grade Pro, toss this on here. CST LUT will go into IPP2, and we'll add the very soft one to start. High contrast, very soft. And this looks good, a great starting point. The footage does look a little bit cool. I am going to end up warming that up, but I'll do that in the Red RAW settings. Last thing I want to do is just add color curves here, or maybe we'll go into the hue saturation curves. Take this blue, make it a little bit more teal, but not too much where it's like fake. We'll also grab the oranges. Now we're going to come into here. We're going to make the oranges real orange to make everything pop. We're going to grab the sky in the Luma, drop this down just a tad bit to give us more detail in the sky. You don't want to go too much or else things will start breaking. But something like that. And then we're just going to go into color wheels. I typically like adding warmth in the shadows and then highlights. Sometimes I like doing like a blue, like a teal or blue in the highlights. Or sometimes I like adding a warmth in the highlights. And just like that, went from this to this very quickly. And then I can get really intense to it, like drop another Grade Pro plugin. We're gonna go into maybe exposure, drop this down, black point we'll bring down too, and then we'll mask it like this. And we'll drag this so it's just the bottom. Just like that. And now everything seems a lot more contrasty, but it's also guiding our viewers' attention to the mosque in the distance. So I think this looks pretty good. And basically in the matter of a couple minutes, we went from this to this. Very quick, very simple. Let's just throw in another one for the hell of it. Let's take a clip like just a nice little walking shot while we were in Turkey. I'm gonna hit it with a color wheel. Kind of just pull these to the extremes. I know this is not the typical way that most people would edit or grade footage. This is the way I do it. I like something quick and I like something easy, something I can just work quickly and get footage out, but still make it look very, very good. So this is the way I do it. Feel free to check out those resources down below, like the Red Apple workflow. You're gonna need it, the IPP2 LUTs, and also feel free to check out my Grade Pro plugin. Here are two important things to keep in mind when shooting with the ZR in Red RAW. You don't need to overexpose this footage. We're so used to overexposing our log footage when shooting with our Sonys and our Canons. With this Red RAW log, you don't really need to overexpose. Keeping it somewhat neutral, even underexposing, especially if you're outside, you'll still get a really clean image. Also, if you don't know what you're doing in the sense of changing your ISO to maximize dynamic range, either in your shadows or highlights, just keep it at the base ISOs, 800 and 6400. And keep in mind that you could change those ISOs later in post. So anyways, that's how I edit and grade the Red RAW footage coming out of the Nikon ZR. If you want to pick up my Grade Pro plugin for Final Cut, I'll leave a link down in the description. It's by no means finished. This is the first rendition or the first version of it. I have so many plans for where I want to go with it and really make it an all-in-one color grading plugin for Final Cut, because the current options are just not that good when it comes to color grading in Final Cut. So I kind of want to really build this out to be a really, really good plugin. So this is the first version. If you want to pick it up, go ahead and do that. Everything will go to supporting the channel, and future updates, you'll get them at no additional cost. You'll just get an email with a link to the new version. So if you pick it up now, you'll continue to get updated versions. I didn't want to release it right now, but I had a bunch of you guys asking about it in my previous videos, so I just decided to release it, and then more updates will come in the future. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like. If you want to see more ZR content, there's a lot on my channel that I've already made, but if you want to see more content like this in general and more ZR content, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.